I would like to welcome you all to this session, which includes the Mason Lecture and Awards, as well as the Presidential Address. My name is Matt Hutter, and I'm the President of the ASMBS, well, at least for the next hour and a half. I hope you all have been enjoying the meeting so far. First of all, I'd like to thank our program chair and co-chairs, Chair John Scott and co-chair Mona Misra, as well as Leslie Heinberg and Laura Andromelis from Integrated Health, and the entire program committee and staff from the ASMBS for putting together an amazing program. Quality of the presentations, the active chats, and the live panels, discussions, video questions, so far they've been most educational and entertaining. I do wish we could all be together in person, and I really look forward to the time when we can. The Mason Lecture is the keynote presentation of the ASMBS annual meeting, named after the founder and first president of the ASMBS, Ed Mason. This is the Mason Presidential Medal with a picture of Dr. Mason on the front. I don't know if you can see it. And on the back, in Latin, for those who took it, it says Unum Erigit Omnes, or one raises all. Dr. Mason was truly the one that raised us all and developed the field of metabolic and bariatric surgery. Dr. Mason passed away in December at the age of 100. During this past year, when our world and our lives have been turned upside down, we also lost two other giants in our field, Nicola Scopinaro and Harvey Sugerman. Therefore, I felt it was most appropriate for this year's Mason Lecture to honor these three icons. I would like to thank Jaime Ponce for spearheading this tribute to the founders of our profession. Dr. Ponce was the president from 2012 to 2013 and gave the presidential address at the first meeting when we combined with TOS to form Obesity Week, held in November. So it is also most fitting that he speaks again today when we move back to our standalone ASMBS annual meeting 8 years later in our June time spot. Dr. Ponce, thank you very much.
Thank you, Matt. I'm going to use a brief presentation, but thank you very much, Matt, for allowing us to coordinate the Mason Lecture, and also for all the hard work that you've done over this difficult year and a half plus term that you had most of the time virtually. I know that it was difficult, but congratulations. I wanted to use a couple of minutes to reflect on what has happened over the last few years. I think it's always a good idea to see where we're coming from since I was president of the ASMBS. So if we look back in 2013, we were celebrating our 30th anniversary from the foundation of the ASMBS. Today, we're getting close to that 40th anniversary, but not quite there yet. And I think several things have happened over these last 8 years that I think is important, especially for our new members, to acknowledge what has happened. Certainly, we have a very strong accreditation program implemented during this time in combination with the American College of Surgeons. More than 90 to 95% of the cases now are being done in accredited centers. We established the standards when I was president and approved and acknowledged them. There's been 2 updates on the standards since then, and that has made our program stronger and better. Also during this time, we managed to put the knowledge in our field in a textbook of surgery that now we have 2 editions in this time frame. This book has been used by many fellows to study for their training, and hopefully will be used for many of us to study for future examinations. We have had several national quality improvement projects during this time. And also outside of the ASMBS, we've seen things that have favored our field. Certainly the American Medical Association classified obesity as a disease in 2013. And even the American Diabetes Association recognized metabolic surgery as part of the treatment algorithm of patients with type 2 diabetes that are suffering from obesity. Now, in regards to the numbers, we've seen since the creation of the Numbers Task Force, a growth from about 150,000 cases to 250,000 cases. Even though for many of us it's not enough and we need more growth, we're still tapping 1% of the cases. I think the next thing that I see that our society is moving towards a much greater recognition from the American Board of Surgery. I think it's exciting to see the American Board of Surgery now implementing a certification of focused practice designation in metabolic and bariatric surgery. By next year, in February, we're gonna have the first certification, and I wanted to encourage everybody to later on in this year apply for this certification because it's gonna be a great way to recognize what we do in our field. And now I wanted to encourage the ASMBS to continue to work and grow our field. Thank you very much, and I look forward to continue with the Mason lecture. So we're gonna go with that. Hello, my name is Jaime Ponce, and I wanted to welcome everybody to the Mason lecture of our ASMBS annual meeting, this year being done virtually. I wanted to thank the program chair and co-chair, John Scott and Mona Misra, for putting an excellent program virtually this year. And I also wanted to congratulate our ASMBS President Matt Hutter for an excellent job in allowing us to coordinate this lecture. This year, we're going to dedicate this lecture to honor 3 pillars of our metabolic and bariatric surgery field: Nicola Scopinaro, Harvey Sugerman, and Ed Mason. Unfortunately, we lost the 3 of them last year. And what we're going to do this time is we're going to honor them on brief presentations for the next few minutes. We're going to start with Nicola Scopinaro. Nicola Scopinaro, he's originally from Italy, from the Tuscany region in Italy. He is considered the inventor of the biliopancreatic diversion surgery. He is the founder of the International Federation for Surgery of Obesity. He's an honorary lifetime IFSO president, and he's the only one that has been achieved this title. He's also an adventurous man. Many of you probably don't know that he likes exotic sports. He enjoys parachute and hang gliding. He also holds the Guinness World Record for a miraculous accident survival after parachuting. Now I'm going to have my colleague and friend, Professor Luigi Angrisani from Italy, and Manuela Mazzarella from IFSO to give us a brief synopsis of Nicola Scopinaro's life. Thank you.
Jaime, for the nice introduction, and thank you and ASMBS for inviting us to present this tribute to Professor Nicola Scopinaro. I will share my presentation with Luigi Angrisani. I am Manuela Mazzarella, Chief Operating Officer of IFSO. The first time I met Nicola was in Long Beach, California in 2010. It was the 15th IFSO World Congress, and Nicola was there, proud on the stage, as you can see him on this slide. The president of the Congress was Matt Hutter, and thanks to Luigi Angrisani, who introduced me to IFSO, and to Harry Frydenberg, who was president of IFSO at that time, I got to know Nicola. His fame preceded him. I had already heard a lot about him, but I would have never imagined that meeting him would feel like I knew him since decades. He was a very elegant, fascinating Italian gentleman, a man from another era, even if he was just 65. Since then, we became friends, and he was a mentor for me, always next to me when I needed him. At congresses, people used to stop him at every corner, asking him to make a picture with him. And I was amazed to see how happy he was to take each and every single picture with each and every single person. Never bothered, always with a smile, always with a friendly comment. Life had been very kind to him. It gave him a lot of successes, a lot of adventures, a life full of risks, and a life lived at high speed. As you all know, he had a very serious accident while he was parachuting. And to tell you what a genius he was, I will tell you that while he was falling down in the sky at the speed of 100 kilometers per hour, he remained rational enough to think that how he could hit the ground without without hurting his lungs and his heart. So he managed to unload the weight all on his legs, and in fact he managed to survive. He had 13 fractures, but no damage to heart and lungs. For every man, this would have been the end, but not for Nicola. He never gave up, and in fact, he never stopped traveling, attending congresses, meeting friends. Surgery was his life, and he just couldn't do without it. Just to give you an idea of how strong was his willpower, I will show you briefly some travels that we did together. We climbed up to the Austrian mountains to attend Charlie Miller's meeting. We went to India and traveled from New Delhi all the way to Agra to admire the Taj Mahal with a temperature of 100 degrees and 100% humidity. And then in Istanbul, we went down under the ground to visit the subterranean cistern in Istanbul. And here we are in Brazil, going up on a cableway on the Corcovado mountain to admire the statue of the Christ the Redeemer. Well, all beautiful locations, one would think. Yes, indeed, but the strange thing is that Nicola did all this on a wheelchair and on his crutches, a real force of nature. So whenever you feel that you are weak and you cannot make it, just think of him, raise your head, smile, and go for your goals, no matter how many obstacles life will put on your way. Only if we do this, his legacy will never die. And now I leave the word to Professor Luigi Angrisani, who will tell you all about Nicola's professional life.
Thank you, Manuela. Thank you, Jaime, for inviting me and Manuela. And I met Nicola Scopinaro in 1995, and basically I shared with him a continuous 25 years of meeting and project and publication. And at that time, when I first met him, he was already traveling with his private aircraft. In fact, I met him in Todien, a small medieval city in the center of Italy, where this surgeon on the right invited the two giants of obesity surgery at that time, already at that time, of course, Nicola and Eddie Mason. And I met in that meeting both of them. It was the first laparoscopic meeting of obesity surgery in Italy. And there was the first time that two generations were going together in the same Congress. Just to put in the context of the scientific landmark of Nicola, we must remind that after the pioneer age and the pioneer operation of pain in the wind, with the beginning of obesity surgery that was malabsorbed, Mason, obviously with initially conceiving the gastric bypass and after the vertical banded gastroplasty, gave his major input to this specialty. But Nicola, with his biliopancreatic diversion, I'm obviously talking of the open era, definitely created the modern version of malabsorptive surgery. And this was basically the two different type of operation with two different concepts, but these men were very linked together. And Eddie Mason founded in '83 the organization we are celebrating today, and this is definitely one of the largest scientific association in surgery of the world. And Nicola that was following his example, and in 1995 founded the federation, the International Federation, of which he has been the first and the unique honorary president, and I had the privilege of being part of it. And of course, IFSO was his baby. And one of the most challenging situation was when laparoscopic and laparotomic surgery were put together in the same meeting. And this was what Nicola accepted to organize with me in Naples, and was really a challenge. He invited all the establishment at that time of obesity surgery, and I tried to invite most of the laparoscopic surgeons around the world. At that time, it was basically the official entrance in obesity surgery of laparoscopy, and we had at that time the two major operations with Cadier and Whitgrove. And this was one of the evening in my house with Eddie Mason and his wife and Nicola. Basically, the man who was really the person in conjunction between the two generations with Alan Whitgrove, of course, because he was operating laparotomically, and he switched to laparoscopic room-wide gastric bypass and was a close friend to Nicola. At that time, also robotic entered in the field with computer motion that was afterwards absorbed by Da Vinci. Nicola was active in the meeting, and basically after that meeting, we switched to the modern age of laparoscopic era, because Garnier designed and conceived the biliopancreatic diversion with the North American style duodenal switch, and Nicola himself proved the feasible laparoscopic standard Scopinaro biliopancreatic diversion. This came together in Capri, where he was extremely happy to celebrate in one of the famous historical place in Capri, the Taverna Anima e Core, dancing and drinking for this. This guy was very special. He was a European championship of parachuting. He was doing night paragliding. He was scuba diving, was really one that was admiring challenge and risk. And this is the last meeting altogether at the Board of Trustees meeting, where all the IFSO presidents joined together last time in Madrid in 2019. I like to think that Nicola today is riding his Porsche, traveling around the world. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Now I'm going to introduce to you Harvey Sugerman. Harvey is considered our academic leader in the field. He is the pioneer in clinical research. He actually did one of the first randomized clinical trials in our field comparing the vertical banded gastroplasty with the Roux-en-Y gastric bypass, and published in 1987. He is the founder and was the editor-in-chief of our SOAR journal for all these years. And he took this journal to the top level very soon after the first issues. He's always kept very rigorous standards, and our journal always was on the top 10 to top 20 of all the surgical journals in the world. Now I'm going to have my colleagues and friends, Eric DeMaria, immediate past president of the ASMBS, and Shanu Kothari, president-elect, and our next president of the ASMBS, to introduce and give us a synopsis of Harvey Sugerman's life as they work with him on different stages of their career.
Hello, my name is Shanu Kothari, and I had the privilege of being the first fellow in minimally invasive and bariatric surgery at the Medical College of Virginia, now Virginia Commonwealth University, in 2000 under the direction of Eric DeMaria. It was there that I had the opportunity to work with Dr. Sugerman. Dr. Sugerman was born in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania in 1938. He received his bachelor's in science degree from Johns Hopkins University and was inducted into the Phi Beta Kappa Honor Society in 1959. He received a master's degree from Thomas Jefferson University in pharmacology in 1963 and subsequently graduated from Jefferson with his medical degree and recognition by Alpha Omega Alpha in 1966. He thereafter did medical internship at the Hospital of the University of Pennsylvania before changing course to pursue a surgical residency from 1967 to 1973. This was followed by a fellowship in shock trauma. He then served for 3 years in the United States Army, rising to the rank of lieutenant colonel. Dr. Sugerman's career on the faculty at VCU spanned 25 years, during which he was promoted to David Hume Professor in 1985, served as the Vice Chair of Research and Education in 1989, Chief of the Division of General and Trauma Surgery in 1997, and Interim Chair of the Department of Surgery in 1998 through 99. He had an academically prolific career, publishing nearly 250 manuscripts, 55 book chapters, and 20 books. He gave 10 named lectureship presentations, was invited to speak before professional societies 13 times, was invited as a visiting professor to 98 universities and other hospitals, and gave 284 presentations to learned societies during his illustrious career. His academic legacy lives on, as many of us former residents and fellows had publications together with Dr. Sugerman that continue to be highly referenced to this day. As a fellow, I can remember a time when my cell phone was stolen out of my bag in my office. Knowing that there was really nothing that could be done about it, I casually mentioned this to Harvey. He immediately called the chief of police to report it. He took it so seriously, one would think that my entire life savings, which wasn't much at the time, had been wiped out in a cyber attack. This is just one of many examples highlighting how much Harvey cared about his trainees, many of which went on to build very successful bariatric programs and fellowships themselves. Buried under that curmudgeonly shell was a spirit of humility hidden within Harvey that many may have not seen. Transitioning from thousands of open bariatric procedures to a minimally invasive approach was not something everyone at his stage of career was willing to do. During fellowship, while at the scrub sink, Dr. Sugerman said to me, "You've done more of these procedures than I have. How about I do this one and you walk me through it?" Little did I know what an amazing opportunity that provided as I and others went on to establish our own fellowships in years to come. One unique aspect of Harvey was his ability to carry out his practice side by side with his lovely wife, Betsy. It was an honor to witness their interactions in clinic and learn equally from them both in that setting. Whenever possible, Harvey brought Betsy to the ASMBS meetings. Betsy is just as much a part of the ASMBS family as Harvey was. A few years into practice, I put on a seminar for primary care doctors to showcase the impact that metabolic and bariatric surgery has on diabetes. Naturally, I invited Harvey to give the keynote address. After the seminar, I wanted to impress my mentor by taking him on a boat ride on the Mississippi River. Since his hotel was near the river, I informed him that I would pick him up via water taxi at the public pier. As I approached the pier, I saw Harvey emerge from his hotel with a generous pour of wine, violating all open carry laws as he strolled across the park to the pier. This was classic Harvey. Some rules simply didn't apply to him. It was on that river cruise he began to bare his soul to me. He shared with me the challenges he faced as a young child, being born severely premature and not even expected to survive, his battles with depression, as well as leaving academia, including the ASMBS for a time, and ultimately returning to both and going on to become the president of ASMBS. He shared much of this story in the Mason lecture, and I would encourage those who have not listened to it or read it to do so. It showed me that the giants in our field that we respect so much are humans too, and their accomplishments certainly come at a cost. Following our annual ASMBS meeting in New Orleans a few years back, I had reservations for my wife and I to have a date night. As we were getting ready, the phone rang in my room. It was Harvey. He simply asked, "Where are you taking me to dinner tonight?" I motioned my wife to call the restaurant to change the reservations to 3 as I shared with him where we would all be having dinner. We had another memorable evening, and being forever in debt to Harvey for what he did for my career, there was no question who was going to pick up the tab. I don't think Harvey was ever satisfied with his own accomplishments. Therefore, he was never satisfied with that of his trainees, myself included. He always pushed us to do more. Following fellowship, when I chose to go back to my community teaching program in Wisconsin, and in doing so turned down several university jobs, he was disappointed in my choice. I told him my academic career was never going to be defined by the institution where I worked. Looking back, his disappointment in my decision to go into community practice was the driving force that fueled me to continue to do research and contribute to the literature after fellowship. A few years later, SWORD was in its infancy and Harvey was the senior editor. We were in an elevator returning from the session at ASMBS. He once again began to share how I could do even more with my academic contributions to the field. As the doors opened to his floor and he got out, I reminded him to look at how many publications I had in SWORD within its first years. As the doors began to close, he turned around with a wry smile and said, "You have been a good boy." For those of us who had the opportunity to work with Harvey Sugerman, we never stopped working for Harvey Sugerman, nor shall we, even after his passing.
My name is Eric DeMaria, and I was fortunate to work with Dr. Sugerman for nearly 15 years at Virginia Commonwealth University. His career came to a premature halt in 2003 when, at the young age of 64, he suffered the adverse consequences many surgeons experience due to the challenging ergonomics of surgery and had to undergo extensive surgical surgery on his spine. His decision to retire from performing surgery did not keep him away from making contributions to his field, as even more important contributions were on his horizon. In 2005, ASMBS decided to launch a new journal owned by the Society, and he was appointed the founding editor-in-chief for SWORD. He put the new journal on the map in many ways with his constant pursuit of excellence. The journal's initial impact factor was 2.9, but with Dr. Sugerman's persistent efforts, the impact factor increased to 4.9 in 2013. The journal SWORD is a true success story as one of the highest-ranking surgical journals, ranking 16th of all 135 journals. The journal receives up to 600 article submissions per year, with many coming from international authors, as the impact factor made it a desirable publication destination for many authors around the world. ASMBS recognized Dr. Sugerman for these accomplishments, along with his many others in the field of bariatric surgery, by awarding him the Society's Lifetime Achievement Award in 2010. Many of us marveled at Dr. Sugerman's constant pursuit of the most life had to offer. He was a true adventurer who grabbed for the gusto in life enthusiastically and took on many physical challenges. He continued to pursue his passion for snow skiing in the Rockies, even traveling to remote areas by helicopter to enjoy the sport, the way only an expert skier could do. Knowing his history of extensive cervical spine surgery, it was clear this could be dangerous, yet he was not deterred. Ironically and unfortunately, it was not the ski slopes, but a simple attempt to hang a bird feeder from his kitchen window in May of 2016 that sidelined Harvey from the physical pursuits he loved. Dr. Sugerman fell from that window and hence began what he would call the final and greatest challenge of his life, quadriplegia. In that fall, he suffered a C6 cervical spinal cord injury and a T5 burst fracture. These led to a long and complicated course. Slowly over time, he gained the ability to move his hands, although they remained quite weak. He was wheelchair dependent, but was able to resume his editor-in-chief duties at SWORD after the initial several months of total disability. He called his return to the helm of SWORD a lifesaver. For him, it gave new meaning to his struggles. He continued to guide the journal forward right up until the time of his passing. In 2018, Dr. Sugerman was asked to give the annual ASMBS Mason Lecture. He addressed the crowd from his wheelchair at center stage with his inspiring talk entitled My Journey. In addition to demonstrating his mastery of the specialty and his important contributions to its history, he also spoke in an incredibly personal way of his lifelong struggles with mental health and depression, including a suicide attempt as a young man that threatened to derail his future as a physician. Many of his colleagues and friends did not know that he struggled with these issues during his life. In this important lecture, he directed the focus away from his own accomplishments and sought to give advice that could help each of us in our own lives. He encouraged us to reject the stigma that accompanies mental illness and to seek treatment. He further described the emotions he had experienced since his spinal cord injury, including anger, guilt, depression, frustration, and hopelessness, and how difficult it was to overcome these feelings. He cited the tremendous support and love of his wife Betsy as the reason he had persisted in his efforts to recover function after his fall, because he realized she would never give up on him, so how could I give up on myself? He noted how fragile our lives are and how we need to bear in mind how much suffering there is everywhere around us in this world. He also noted the fear and uncertainty that comes along with being a patient, wondering and hoping that treatments will work and recovery can happen. In our prayers, we firmly embrace the vision of his cherished daughter, Catherine, in remembrance of her father, that he is skiing and walking again. That is the way we wish to remember him and the image to carry onward in our hearts and minds whenever we think of this great and kind man, husband, father, and grandfather, but also pioneer, critical thinker, educator, researcher, mentor, leader, and last but far from least, surgeon extraordinaire.
And finally, I'm going to introduce to you Dr. Ed Mason. Dr. Ed Mason is considered the father of bariatric surgery. He is the inventor of the gastric bypass and also the vertical banded gastroplasty for the treatment of severe obesity. He is the founder and the first president of the American Society for Bariatric Surgery, as it was called our society initially. And actually, on his early times, he developed the first international bariatric surgery registry in times in which it was very difficult actually to achieve a registry. There were no big computer systems and the databases were not as sophisticated as we have now. Now I'm going to have my colleague and friend, Dr. Nguyen, past president of the ASMBS, to give us a synopsis of his life and achievements. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Ladies and gentlemen, friends and colleagues, in 2020, our field of metabolic and bariatric surgery has lost a great pioneer, Dr. Edward E. Mason. Today, we would like to pay tribute to Dr. Mason, who we all consider as the father of obesity surgery. Andy Warhol once said that the idea is not to live forever, but to create something that will. And that was what Dr. Mason was able to achieve. In 1965, Dr. Mason did a series of experiments to treat peptic ulcer disease with gastric bypass. One of the side effects he observed in obese patients was weight loss, and gastric bypass surgery for obesity was born. This is the original loop gastric bypass performed by Dr. Mason for the treatment of severe obesity in 1966. He stated that, "I take the undesirable effect of gastric bypass, which was weight loss, and use it for the desirable effect to treat obesity." In 1973, Dr. Mason also pioneered another bariatric operation, the vertical banded gastroplasty, which was the dominant bariatric operation throughout the 80s and the 90s. Dr. Mason wasn't just a pioneer, he was also a leader, and in 1977, he held the first gastric bypass workshop at the University of Iowa. He hosted the conference for more than 50 international surgeons. No fancy hotel, no PowerPoint presentation, but just roundtable discussion on the topic of bariatric surgery at the backyard of his home in Iowa. One of the chapters in this workshop was on the data for diabetes and blood pressure after gastric bypass. Even at that time, it was already known that there is a metabolic effect after bariatric surgery. This is an excerpt from the book showing some of the data for patients with diabetes. It states that postoperatively, it is interesting to note that 17 patients were no longer diabetes. What is even more interesting is the fact that many of the less severe diabetics need no control at all postoperatively. In 1983, at one of the bariatric surgery curriculum, Dr. Mason founded the American Society for Bariatric Surgery. He was the first ASBS president, serving between 1983 to 1985. Dr. Mason also established the first international bariatric surgery registry. We all owe Dr. Mason enormous gratitude for his vision and founding of our society, as well as his persistent drive for acceptance of surgical treatment of obesity. In 2003, Dr. Mason received the University of Iowa Distinguished Alumnus Award, which is the highest honor the college bestowed upon its graduate. In 2005, Dr. Mason was awarded the ASMBS Foundation Outstanding Achievement Award. In 2013, Dr. Mason received the Medallion for Achievement of Surgical Care by the American Surgical Association, which is the oldest and most prestigious surgical organization in the US. This award was given to recognize an individual who have made seminal contribution in clinical surgery. In 2014, when I was president, I asked Dr. Mason to be our Mason lecturer. He was giving the name lecture that will forever bear his name. On a personal note, I was fortunate to visit Dr. Mason at his home with the rest of the Executive Council in 2014 to see for ourselves the birthplace of bariatric surgery. And it's not an ordinary day to be able to take a selfie with the father of obesity surgery. This cartoon drawn by Dr. Walter Pori sums it best on the life of Dr. Mason. Dr. Mason's picture is positioned between two pioneers in science. To the left is a picture of Joseph Lister, who pioneered antiseptic surgery. And to the right is a picture of Louis Pasteur, who discovered the principle of pasteurization. The caption states that his discovery led to the cure of diabetes, high blood pressure, and abnormal lipids. It even prevents cancer. We, the ASMBS, salute Dr. Mason and will forever be grateful for his vision and contribution to our field. And as the founding president of our society, Dr. Mason will always be remembered as the father of obesity surgery. And now, I would like to conclude this tribute with a video on the life and career in medicine of Dr. Edward E. Mason. This was developed in 2004 during my presidency of the ASMBS. What is special about this video tribute is that we will also hear comments from other pioneers in the field who recently passed away. That's Dr. Nicola Scopinaro and Dr. Harvey Sugerman.
Dr. Edward E. Mason was born on October 16, 1920, in Boise, Idaho. His father was Edward F. Mason, who taught photojournalism at the University of Iowa. His mother was an accomplished sculptor.
My mother made this when I was 12 years old. She could make a bust like this in about 45 minutes.
His family moved to Iowa City when he was 9 years old. He obtained his undergraduate degree and went to medical school at the University of Iowa. He completed his PhD in surgery at the University of Minnesota in 1944. Dr. Mason married Dordana, who received her master's in nutrition from the University of Iowa as well. They had 4 children, 1 daughter and 3 boys. To date, they have 17 grandchildren and great-grandchildren. Dr. Mason was instrumental in establishing the American Society of Bariatric Surgery.
We had the American Society for Surgery, So we had an American Society for Bariatric Surgery.
Dr. Mason began an annual postgraduate course for the surgical treatment of obesity called the Bariatric Surgery Colloquium at the University of Iowa, with the first one in 1979.
We were 70 surgeons helping each other.
In 1983, at the Bariatric Surgery Colloquium, the ASBS was officially formed, with approximately 70 members in attendance.
I didn't realize, but towards the end of the meeting, you congratulated us all that we were all founding members of ASBS.
Dr. Mason was the first president of the ASBS and served between 1983 and 1985.
Who decided that?
I did.
Another important contribution from Dr. Mason was his initiative to track the outcome of patients who underwent bariatric surgeries years before anyone else did, and initiated the International Bariatric Surgery Registry in 1996, which has accrued more than 30,000 patients.
You can't analyze data if you don't have it.
And we owe him a lot for that because he gave us a strong foundation to build on.
I'm thankful for Dr. Mason's for his patience, persistence, honesty, and forward thinking.
We owe him a deep debt of gratitude for all that he's provided for all of our patients.
He is maybe one of the greatest visionaries in our field and of all time in the profession of surgery.
Those are enormous things that Ed did, and he's world famous for and will remain deservedly that way.
Becoming a landmark for all of them and for his entire life, he's still a landmark for every obesity surgeon.
You are a great surgeon, an innovative scientist, an excellent mentor, a great but humble leader, an exemplary family man.
I think that we're so very, very fortunate to have an amazing man like you, Ed Mason, to be the father of our organization. We would not be where we are today if it wasn't for you. And this whole video, all of this is for you. We are where we are today because you helped build a strong foundation for us.
Today, Dr. Mason is 94 and lives with his wife Dordana, who is 92 years old. Dordana reads a book each day and chooses them from the public library. Dr. Mason enjoys taking naps, taking care of their house, and exercise.
I swim every day during the week. It's not open on the weekend. And I've sort of developed a geriatric stroke.
Goodbye, Ed, and please don't forget to embrace Dordana for me. Goodbye.
From each of the members of the American Society of Metabolic and Bariatric Surgery, we salute you and say thank you.
I'm afraid of being buried in email.
And thank you very much to all. Thank you for attending this presentation. And now we're going to go to the presidential address of our president, Dr. Matt Hutter. Thank you very much.
For putting together that moving tribute, and thanks to all the presenters. Next, I'd like to present the ASMBS Awards. So let me just pull up my screen here, one moment. Let's see here. All right. Hopefully that looks okay. The ASMBS Foundation customarily presents awards as part of the LEAD Awards. That will be done virtually this year, and I encourage you all to provide nomination for those awards. Nominations close July 23rd. The ASMBS as a society provides really one major award, the Committee of the Year Award. The engine of our society is the 26 committees that do all the work. The role of the EC and the Executive Council is to harness that energy and nudge it in the right direction. Through countless hours of Zoom calls and discussions, with writing and revising, these committees come up with innovative ideas and then bring them over the goal line. As part of the strategic planning initiative, all committee chairs presented their accomplishments and goals in the past 2 weeks. The Executive Council had a heated discussion and then a blind vote. The choice was hard, as so many committees have done so much in the past year and a half. I hereby award the Committee of the Year Award to the Program Committee. During the past year and a half, the Program Committee planned for an in-person meeting in December, which was not possible due to COVID. It created our first virtual meeting with the ASMBS weekend in January, which was a smashing success. We planned for a hybrid meeting in Vegas, but Vegas ended up not opening in time, so we pivoted again with the virtual meeting today. Thank you, Drs. John Scott and the entire Program Committee for making this meeting such a success. Last night at the business meeting, I presented the 5 Distinguished Service Awards to individuals for all the work they have done for our society since our last meeting. Joe Northup was awarded a Distinguished Service Award for his constant hard work and advocacy as the chair of the Access to Care Committee. The Access to Care Committee was awarded the Committee of the Year at the last meeting under the guidance of Dr. Joe Northup, and they were in consideration again for repeating that distinction. Dr. Northup was elected to the Executive Council this year. Congratulations, Dr. Northup. Dr. Farah Hussein was awarded a Distinguished Service Award for her work over the past 3 years as the inaugural chair of the Diversity and Inclusion Committee. In the past year, when the racial injustice in our country became apparent to all, Dr. Hussein and the D&I Committee were instrumental in helping move our society to be more inclusive. Thank you, Dr. Hussein. Dr. Jason Kempenick was awarded a Distinguished Service Award for leading the work of the Public Education Committee, which was very prolific in creating written content for patients that is critical for our ongoing work to make our website more patient-friendly. Steve Goodman is the head of Meeting Advice, the company that contracts for and runs our in-person meetings. A man behind the scenes. Many of you may not have met him before, but Steve and his team went above and beyond in the past year and a half to provide the ASMBS with new venues and contracts for the next 6 years, all as standalone meetings in the spring. This allowed us to extricate ourselves from Obesity Week and our contracts that binded us to them. Our 2020 meeting in Atlanta was able to be canceled due to force majeure. The meeting in Dallas in 2021 was recontracted to 2022. We planned a hybrid meeting in Vegas, which was then canceled. And in 2022, the San Antonio meeting was changed to 2026. Vegas in 2023 was moved to the spring, and our meeting in Washington, D.C. did the same. One thing had to move to find a place for the next, just like a Rubik's Cube. That is a lot of negotiating and recontracting. Thank you, Steve, very much. We have a firm foundation for the next 6 years. Much appreciated. The final Distinguished Service Award goes to Teresa Fraker. Teresa is the program administrator for the MBSAQIP and works for the American College of Surgeons. She has directed and overseen all aspects of this most vital program for the past 8 years. She has continuously worked to educate our surgical clinical reviewers and continuously update and improve the important accreditation program. She has run pre-conferences meetings for the SCRs and coordinators for each and every meeting, not only at our meeting, but at the American College of Surgeons, their Quality and Safety Conference. Thank you, Teresa, for being a friend and an advocate for all you do for the MBSAQIP. Next, I would like to present you with our next Secretary-Treasurer, Dr. Marina Kurian. Dr. Kurian was elected by you, our members, to be president in 2023 to 2024, after Dr. Shanu Kothari and then Dr. Teresa Lemasters. Finally, These 4 people will be joining the Executive Council. Dr. Joe Northup, Dr. Corey McBride, and Dr. Farah Hussein were all elected for a 3-year term, and Dr. Ali Aminian was appointed for a 2-year position. Welcome to the Executive Council. And that completes the award section. Thank you.
Hello, it is my great honor today to introduce Dr. Matthew M. Hutter, MD, MPH, MBA, FACS, FASMBS, our 34th President of the American Society for Metabolic and Bariatric Surgery, for his presidential address in June 2021. Dr. Hutter is an extremely accomplished individual. He's a general and GI surgeon at Massachusetts General Hospital. He was Harvard educated, went to Harvard Medical School and Harvard School of Public Health, and then most recently received an MBA degree from MIT. He's a professor of surgery at Harvard. He's director of the MGH Weight Center. He's director of the Codman Center at MGH, and he's director of the MGH Surgery Quality Program. My only disclosure as a speaker is that Dr. Hutter and I actually come from the same town in Massachusetts, Needham, Mass, seen here in this photo, the town hall of Needham. I didn't know Matt when we were kids, and I wasn't really sure why that was. He had a large family. And then I realized, here's a picture of downtown Needham, and you can see the train tracks running through the downtown area, and that's what helped me figure out why we hadn't met, is that there are 2 sides to the tracks in Needham. And when I learned recently, when doing this research for Dr. Hutter's presentation, that the Hutter family had a pool, I realized that I grew up on the wrong side of the tracks. And here's the Hutter family pool, where they're filling it here nicely from the hose. And this actually is our President Matt, along with one of his sisters. And for those of you who don't recognize him, apparently he was a tow-headed blonde boy. So here's Matt as a child in the family pool. Here is Matt with his sister Elizabeth. They were very close growing up, and again, you can see his blonde head of hair in this picture. Now, Matt's parents, Dr. Dolph Hutter and his wife Sylvia, by all accounts are wonderful people. Dr. Hutter was a cardiologist, recently retired, and here's a picture of them closer to the present time, enjoying some family get-together. Here's a picture of Matt Hutter and his 4 siblings. His oldest sister, Janice Marie, older brother Joe, sister Elizabeth, and then Johnny, the baby. And the blue arrow here shows you Matt as a child once again. And his lovely wife, Amy, explained to me that he's the one in all the pictures with the bowl cut and the blonde head of hair. So that's Matt. Now this family of 5 is truly remarkable, because here's a picture of them all grown up, and they all became doctors in various specialties. And for those of you who might not recognize Matt, because he here used to be blonde and now he's a brown-haired adult male, this blue arrow points out which of the 5 siblings is Matt Hutter. So here's some pictures from teenage years for Matt. On the left is his high school picture, a handsome young man, now turned brunette. Picture on top with a couple of his siblings, and then on the bottom right, you can see him doing one of the things he really enjoyed doing, which was playing lacrosse. He's quite a good lacrosse player, growing up, and Matt's very good at sports, enjoyed sports. So here's Matt. He actually played varsity lacrosse for Harvard, and I'm told in his junior year they tied for first in the Ivy League and went to the finals of the NCAA tournament. So quite impressive. This picture is with his dad and his two brothers. Matt's the one in the lacrosse uniform. Now we turn to his lovely wife, Amy. They met at Harvard as undergrads, and I'm told they both were interested in pursuing economics as a field of study. I guess we can figure out how that went for Matt, since he's no longer in economics, but maybe with his MBA degree, he's going back to those roots. But here on the left they are as undergraduates, and then the happy couple to the right here, just recently actually, when their oldest graduated from high school. So great couple. Now Amy, I'm told, has some strong interests of her own. She's a great tennis player. She actually spent 5 years on the tennis tour, pretty impressive, and also now works in finance. So she's stuck with the economic angle. Here's Matt when he went to medical school, and I think this is the day he showed up to his pathology class, and I think everyone in the classroom knew that he was going to be the star pupil, because as you can see, he was wheeling in his own microscope to start the class, and it's a pretty fancy one hooked up to a television with a camera. So that's definitely Matt, to show up with the best abilities in a class. So I can see that happening. Here's Matt when he got his MPH degree with his son Max, enjoying a phone call celebrating his graduation. And then a great picture, a collage of various trips. Amy tells me the family enjoys to go on trips. They try to go at least once a year to some great destination as a family. They have 3 children, Max, the oldest, Will, the second child, and Anna, the youngest, who just turned 14. And you can see all the various destinations they've been to all over the world, and that they really have fun traveling as a family. And of course, the final family member down here at the bottom is Bear, the dog who apparently likes to go out in the kayak. So what a wonderful, wonderful family. So let's turn our attention to Matt as president of the ASMBS, and clearly this is a year like no other. Tremendous challenges that Matt had to face as our president. Who would have predicted a global pandemic that shut down non-emergent surgery, our inability to hold any in-person meetings, and inability to travel anywhere? And Matt actually ended up running a COVID hospital in downtown Boston at the Boston Convention Center for a number of months. There were numerous conflicts besides these worldwide global conflicts. One of the major ones is over ASMBS's decision to leave the Obesity Week meeting, and conflict with the Obesity Society over that. And that was very difficult, multiple negotiations, meetings, strategy planning, etc., dealing with TOS, trying to work through the conflicts. So what I'd like to do is show this picture here of Matt, and the thing that I was impressed with about this picture is you can see here evidence between this and the next several pictures of his superhuman efforts on our behalf this year. I want you to notice this large wooden staff that he carried here as he waded into the sea, and its extraordinary power, and I'll demonstrate that for you now. But this is an example of our leader leading us in his efforts against TOS in the Obesity Week conflict. And here you go. here's what Matt did for us. He raised his staff and he parted the sea of conflict. And you can see his people, the ASMBS people, can now flee Obesity Week and return to our own meeting, which is what we're at today, the ASMBS annual meeting. So truly, Matt's amazing powers and pursuit of the goals for the organization was incredible. Interestingly, and most importantly, Matt didn't forget about the financial aspects. He was able to recover the several millions of dollars that was withheld from ASMBS, and here he is showing up with the Brinks truck to deposit our long lost funds back in ASMBS coffers. So bravo to Matt. I would say as an observer of our president this year that we couldn't have had a better person at the right place and the right time in our organization's history to lead us through some of these challenges. Matt did a phenomenal job. He was dedicated to seeking the best resolution for ASMBS in all the conflicts. He led our organization well. He presented webinars to help people who were in disarray because of the pandemic to help them get back on track with their practices. Really was a phenomenal leader, patient, tolerant, listened to everyone's input, really did a fantastic job leading our organization this year, and deserves a toast, I think, from all of us for his hard work as he tries to recover in this picture from a hard job well done. So now it is my privilege to present to you the 34th President of the American Society for Metabolic and Bariatric Surgery, Dr. Matthew M. Hutter.
Thank you very much for the kind introduction. I guess it is only appropriate that I am speaking to you via video from behind my desk, as that has been our default mode of communication for over a year now, whether it's been webinars, Zoom meetings, or the top 5 and the 5th videos. Thank you for the opportunity to present today. The following are my disclosures. None of them present conflicts with my presentation today. The last time we met for the ASMBS annual meeting was during Obesity Week in November 2019 in Las Vegas. Since we had decided to leave Obesity Week and return to a standalone meeting, we had the opportunity to change the timing of the meeting. As we do for all important decisions, we asked you, our members, to vote. This was the second highest vote of all times, second only to the vote to continue accreditation. The members spoke loudly and wanted to return to a May-June meeting, and therefore, this year's meeting is now in a year and a half since we last met. I am happy to say that we have contracted for all of our future meetings to be held in the spring, and next year will be in Dallas, followed by Las Vegas, then San Diego, Washington, D.C., and then San Antonio in 2026. I would like to start by thanking first and foremost you, our members, for all that you have done this past year and a half. The engine that drives all this work is made up of you, our members, and the 26 committees that have worked diligently since our last annual meeting. The countless hours dedicated to the activities of our society are greatly appreciated, whether it is work on committees, giving talks, webinars, guidelines, and statements. This is a voluntary army that is doing so out of service for the greater good, especially our patients, and your service is greatly appreciated. I especially would like to thank Drs. John, Scott, and Mona Misra for not only putting together this excellent program, but for all the work in the past year and a half, switching from in-person to virtual to hybrid, and now virtual again. I would like to thank the people we work with in our offices, in the clinics, in the operating room, and in the hospital. This is truly a team sport, and all members of the team are critical to provide the optimal care for our patients. I would like to thank the mentors and leaders who have trained and developed us as surgeons. Mine are shown here. And I would like to thank the fellows who have had the privilege to train and from whom I have learned so much. I think we should all thank our families for the sacrifice they have made on behalf of our careers, which involves putting our patients first. I am the fourth out of 5 children and am blessed to have a very caring and supportive family. Much of this is owed to my mother and father, whose love and passion for work and what they do has made a lasting impression on all the 5 children. I would like to thank my wife, who I met as a freshman in college, and we've been married for over 22 years. And our children, Max, Will, and Anna, here when they were young, and this is what they look like today at the ages of 18, 16, and 14. I am so proud and lucky to have such thoughtful and caring children. Thank you, Amy, for all you do to make our house a home and our family so loved. I would like to thank the ASMBS staff. I think it is more than appropriate that they are shown here in this picture on the Zoom platform, as this has been the reality of this year. And for Georgianne Mallory, Georgianne, a special thank you for being the heart, mind, and backbone of the organization. You steer the ship through troubled waters, no matter what crew is on board for their fleeting tenure, and always with a smile on your face. You are used to guiding sharks, so holding a small alligator is nothing for you. My biggest regret from this meeting is that we can't celebrate in person with you, the staff, and our members for all the hard work since the previous meeting, but I look forward to doing so when we can meet in person in the future years. I guess it goes without saying that this past year and a half was more challenging than most due to COVID-19. 15 months ago, COVID-19 came to the USA from China to Italy and through New York and then to Boston where I live. On March 13th, elective surgery was shut down and remained shut down for 3 months in my state. During this time, the ASMBS kicked into action, producing multiple webinars in order to address the issues and concerns we were facing as COVID swept our nation and life as we knew it shut down. On a Zoom webinar platform, we started the COVID-19 updates on April 14, 2020, and every other week we produced a total of 6 webinars in order to collectively address and understand the challenges as they unfolded. The ASMBS issued a statement about the COVID pandemic, which was published in SWORD, titled Safer Through Surgery. And in that statement from the Executive Council, we stated that metabolic and bariatric surgery should be restarted when it is safe to do so. The ASMBS disagrees with the concept that bariatric surgery should be postponed until the pandemic is over. We went on to say that for those who find elective surgery is not necessary or optional, that the ASMBS asserts that metabolic and bariatric surgery is not elective. It is medically necessary and the best treatment for those with a life-threatening and life-limiting disease of severe obesity. The Independent Community Practice Group created a webinar about surviving the economic impact during COVID. Many hospitals and practices face difficult decisions about staffing and the Paycheck Protection Program, and how best to weather the storm from the economic impact from being shut down. In the webinar about restarting surgery, when and how to do so safely, Cliff Coe from the American College of Surgeons provided us with guidance at the national level, and we also learned from our colleagues in China about their experience with how and when to restart surgery, since when we were shutting down in the US, China had already begun opening up. Dr. Charles Zhang from Beijing presented the lessons learned from China. Subsequent webinars addressed ways to prioritize which patients to start with first as we opened up. Dr. Vivek Prashant presented his work on medically necessary time-sensitive surgery and a scoring framework to consider when resuming bariatric surgery. A robust discussion ensued of whether to proceed with lower-risk patients first or whether it is actually preferable to proceed with the sicker patients first, as they have the most to benefit from metabolic and bariatric surgery. As the COVID crisis wore on, it became important to focus not only on the wellness of our patients, but the wellness of ourselves and our staff. This was the focus of another webinar featuring integrated health specialists, as well as communications on the top 5 and the 5th, highlighting that we as surgeons have been trained to overcome such forces as we make life and death decisions on behalf of our patients. Resiliency is one of our greatest strengths. Now, as our lives and our livelihood are under attack, it is time to use those strengths to heal ourselves. COVID severely impacted the training and education of our fellows. They have a one-year fellowship, which was interrupted for 4 months. It made it challenging for the trainees to achieve the 50 anastomotic cases required to get a certificate of completion. The Bariatric Surgery Training Committee, led by Matt Martin and Adrian Dan, kicked into action to address these challenges. A new policy was created, which helped to thread the needle between fairness for the fellows, but an insurance for the safety for our patients. The Bariatric Surgery Training Committee also developed the Fellow Project. The Fellow Project includes monthly Grand Rounds type webinars, which were developed based upon the ASMBS Fellows curriculum, and helped to further the education of our fellows during this time when many of the hospitals were focusing on COVID and at the expense of didactics. John F. Kennedy once said, when written in Chinese, the word crisis is composed of two characters. One represents danger and the other represents opportunity. Although there was certainly danger during the COVID pandemic, there were also multiple opportunities for us and our patients. One of the silver linings of COVID was telehealth. COVID broke down the barriers and allowed the use of telehealth by the development of new platforms, the easement of rules, and the ability to bill for such visits. The ASMBS started a telemedicine task force, which was chaired by Dr. Betsy Dovek and Dr. Rich Peterson. Telehealth is certainly the future for the treatment of obesity, as it decreases barriers to access and facilitates the multidisciplinary long-term care which is so critical for successful treatment. Virtual care can be instituted on almost all steps of the patient's pathway, excluding, of course, surgery itself. If someone had said that I would operate on a patient who I had never seen or examined before in person, I would have said, no way. However, even now, we are seeing over 95% of our patients virtually. I can virtually go through the consent process with my diagrams and doodles using a tablet and with face-to-face virtual platform. We both feel comfortable for them to sign on the X shown here when I meet them for the first time in the induction room. Telehealth is a major benefit to us and our patients, and we need to do everything we can in order to assure that telehealth remains an option for the care of our patients. Another silver lining of COVID is the realization that obesity is a disease. Although that we have long understood that obesity is a disease, COVID pointed this out to the rest of the world by unfortunately showing that patients with obesity are at high risk for COVID, including increased risk of hospitalization, ICU care, intubation, and mortality. This reality, which was highlighted in the news, in the press, and by the guidelines of the CDC, made it clear to many that obesity is not a lifestyle choice, but is not a cosmetic issue. It is actually a disease in an unhealthy state. Another silver lining of COVID was the realization that healthcare is a noble profession and a higher calling. In fact, COVID was a reaffirmation of why we all went into healthcare. This is the Boston Convention Center during the ASMBS annual meeting at Obesity Week in 2014. During the COVID crisis, this is what the sign looked like, as it had become a field hospital called the Boston Hope Field Hospital. This 1,000-bed field hospital was only for COVID patients, and its goal was to decompress the acute care hospitals in the region. Since our bariatric surgical cases were shut down during COVID, I did not want to sit on the sidelines during this healthcare crisis. I was asked to serve as the Chief of Clinical Operations for Boston Hope while the field hospital was standing. I was happy to have had the opportunity to help those in need. That is why we all went into healthcare in the first place. The ASMBS created feature articles called Profiles in Courage and Caring during COVID-19. Here, Dr. Matt Martin and Danielle Friedman are seen working at the Jacobi Medical Center in the Bronx. This quote from Matt Martin saying, it was the worst mass casualty scene I have ever seen, means a lot since he has completed 5 combat deployments in Iraq and Afghanistan. Arga Von Salas traveled from California to New York and used her vacation time to help out during the critical time. We should all be very proud of so many of our members who stepped up in so many ways during this time of need. After things initially quieted down, A second surge came upon us in December. Here in Boston, we were shut down for over 3 months again, from December through March, until a vaccine was accessible to all. We currently are just entering the light at the end of that long tunnel, and our masks are off, and life, as we used to know it, seems to be opening up. Another challenge during this time was extrication from Obesity Week. In March of 2019, the ASMBS voted to withdraw from Obesity Week. However, after failed attempts with the help of a mediator, legal action ensued for the past 18 months. I'm happy to say that as of 2 weeks ago, we have completed extrication from Obesity Week. The $1.9 million of proceeds from previous meetings has all been received. Meeting contracts that included ASMBS with Obesity Week have been terminated for the next 5 years, and the ASMBS has secured favorable meeting contracts for these new venues in the spring through 2026 for our standalone meetings. Though such legal actions are expensive, they were necessary to secure these funds and secure our future. One highlight during this time has been the movement towards creating a board specialty designation. This is termed Focused Practice Designation by the American Board of Surgery and the American Board of Medical Specialties. We are the first surgical specialty under the American Board of Surgery to be granted such a designation, which recognizes us as a specialty. It includes a high-stakes exam, and we are currently working closely with the American Board of Surgery and have created a board certification committee, and a blueprint for the exam has been developed. Item writers have been trained and are writing questions. We have an aggressive timeline and hope for surgeons to be able to sit for the exam in spring of 2022. 1 week before the COVID-19 pandemic swept into the United States, the Executive Council was fortuitous enough to embark on a strategic planning retreat. We wanted to address the big issues facing our patients and our profession in the next 5 to 10 years. We went through a sticker exercise to identify and then prioritize things impacting our patients, providers, and the ASMBS itself. We were then able to prioritize them with a problem priority matrix based upon effort and impact. You can see here that some of the priorities we identified as a group included weight regain and wellness, addressing stigma and fear, demonstrating and creating value for members, and addressing diversity. These issues became the focus for the projects over the following year and a half at the ASMBS. Shortly thereafter, the brutal killings of George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, and countless untold others have triggered widespread outrage. The ASMBS Executive Council, along with the Diversity and Inclusion Committee, released the following statement on racial injustice. In this we stated that we stand firmly in solidarity with the Black community and pledge to fight against racism, intolerance, violence, and bias by promoting and practicing equity, diversity, and inclusion. To be silent is to be part of the problem and not part of the solution, which is unacceptable. The Diversity and Inclusion Committee has worked diligently throughout this past year and a half during these most challenging times for our country, through countless initiatives to address diversity and inclusion for our society and our patients. Farah Hussein, the chair, was elected by you, our members of the Executive Council. Congratulations, Dr. Farah Hussein, and a heartfelt thanks to all the members of the committee. One of the major issues we grappled with during our strategic planning is why there are much less than 1% of patients who could have metabolic and bariatric surgery who are actually having surgery each year. In short, why is surgery not mainstream? When you think about it, there are approximately 40 to 50 million people who could have surgery because their BMI is greater than 40 or BMI greater than 35 with weight-related comorbidities, or even 30 to 35 with diabetes. However, there are only 250,000 operations performed each year in the United States. Looking at it another way, for every one person who has surgery, there are 160 to 200 people who could benefit from surgery. And of those, only 2 are referred to or present to a surgeon. My term for this is the funnel. Our goal should be to help move patients through this funnel towards the understanding that surgery is safe and effective and the best treatment for severe obesity. This funnel is similar to the classic marketing funnel that is talked about in business schools, which includes awareness, consideration, and conversion. In our setting, people become aware that obesity is a disease. They consider getting treatment and consider their treatment options and present for further discussions for surgical care, at which time they may understand that surgery is the best treatment for them. And conversion is the decision to have surgery. So why is surgery not mainstream? Well, initially access was the issue, but now insurance coverage is widespread, so we cannot blame that. We have reached out to PCPs and diabetes specialists and cardiologists, transplant specialists, and orthopedic surgeons, but this has not been enough. Unfortunately, obesity is considered by many to be a lifestyle choice, a cosmetic issue, and not a disease. We hear things like surgery is cheating or surgery is too extreme, that I do not need surgery, I just need a little help, or that surgery is for the 600-pound patient. That is not me. We hear that surgery is not safe and that everyone gains their weight back. There's a stigma about surgery and recall bias where bad outcomes, even though rare, are remembered more than the frequent good outcomes. So what can we do? The following is a list of 6 things we can do to help fill this funnel and move patients along the path to the most effective treatment for obesity, surgery. Number 1 is to raise awareness and educate our patients, including direct-to-consumer education. Number 2 is to measure and promote quality of life. Live longer, live better. Number 3, we need to give our patients a voice and address the stigma. Number 4, we need to manage expectations since our patients are or should be our best advocates. Number 5, we need to demonstrate and create value for hospitals, hospital systems, and all stakeholders. And number 6, we need to embrace obesity medical specialists and multidisciplinary treatments. Let's go over each of these 6 things. Number 1, with regards to raising awareness and educating our patients, the ASMBS has been working towards overhauling the website to be more patient-focused. More work needs to be done, but the Public Education Committee and others have been providing excellent content. We have started a campaign called Escape Diabetes. Dr. DeMaria spearheaded this initiative, and it hopes to target patients with diabetes who may not understand that metabolic and bariatric surgery is not just weight loss surgery, but the best treatment for diabetes. We have started a direct-to-consumer marketing campaign through WebMD. WebMD is the leading health publisher in the United States. We have just completed a 6-month campaign in order to guide potential patients to the content we have created. The goal of this WebMD campaign is to fill the top of the funnel, which includes awareness and education and engagement. This has been a tremendous success, with over 1 million in-market patients reached, over 4 minutes on average spent on their native page, which is 2 times industry standard, and over 12,000 entrances into the provider search tool for the ASMBS. Make sure to update your Find a Provider profile. However, even if you don't, by increasing awareness, education, and engagement, everyone benefits from this. Number 2, measuring and promoting quality of life. Live longer, live better. We have the best job in the world. We see our patients not only getting thinner and see their diabetes and other metabolic diseases go in remission, but we get to see this. We get to see the thumbs up. We get to see that they are happy, that their quality of life is improved. My favorite part of the job is that 1-year post-operative visit when we hear our patients state ecstatically how they can play with their kids, how they can go on a plane, how they can shop in stores, and now how they have so much more energy. Through a PCORI-funded project, the MBS AQIP has developed a system to capture patient-reported outcomes to measure quality of life, including obesity and weight loss quality of life, as well as physical health and obesity-related problems. You can see a dramatic increase in their quality of life from preoperative to postoperative in both the bypass and the sleeve patients. We can see a dramatic decrease in the obesity-related problems from preoperatively to postoperatively, as well as improvement in the physical health scores. Over 102 centers have opted into the MBS-AQIP Patient-Reported Outcomes Program, and over 25,000 patients have been enrolled. I am happy to say that metabolic and bariatric surgery is again leading the way, as the American College of Surgeons has made national implementation on all the ACS quality programs based upon this MBS-AQIP initiative. Starting in August, the patient-reported outcomes will be on the IQVIA platform, which will facilitate and streamline the integration with the current MBS-AQIP program. Not only does this measure what matters most to our patients, their quality of life, but it may also be a better way to capture long-term outcomes and lessen the data collection burden. Number 3, giving our patients a voice in fighting the stigma. The Obesity Action Coalition is hard at work, and the ASMBS has played a role in the international movement to fight stigma during World Obesity Day. We need to include patient testimonials and always use patient-first language. No more blame for our patients. When cancer treatment does not work, the oncologist does not blame the patient, they blame the disease. Obesity is a disease, and some people have a more severe form of that disease which requires adjuvant treatments. We should no longer use the word failure. Number 4, manage expectations so our patients are our best advocates. The MBS-AQIP has created the risk-benefit calculator where patients or providers can enter specific information like age, sex, height, weight, and comorbidities, and then receive personalized reports with regards to the risks and benefits to expect following surgery. Not only do they learn about the low complication rates and how they differ between different procedures, but also the expected weight loss for different operations. They also learn what to expect with regards to reduction in comorbidities, depending upon the operation chosen. Through education and patient-specific data, we hope to make sure their expectations are realistic. Implementation and use of the risk-benefit calculator will be the next quality improvement project for the MBS-AQIP, so I encourage everyone to get their patients using it today. I would like also to give a shout out to the current MBS-AQIP Quality Improvement Project, BSTOP, the Bariatric Surgery Targeting Opioid Prescriptions Project. 310 centers are actively participating in this project, spearheaded by Dr. Tony Petrick, and Dr. Petrick reports excellent interim outcomes to date. Number 5, demonstrating value to hospitals, hospital systems, payers, and employers. Value is measured by quality over cost, and using the MBS-QIP data we can measure our quality, and currently the American College of Surgeons is partnering with the Harvard Business School using TDABC, or Time-Driven Activity-Based Cost Accounting, to measure costs. This was recently developed in patients and currently is being piloted at a few centers. It is a very promising project so we can identify costs to better inform us about our value and ensure that surgical care is adequately reimbursed, as this care gets shifted from inpatient to outpatient and also to ambulatory surgical care centers. In the future world of bundled payments and insurance-driven mandates, everyone will certainly need to know their costs and the care provided in order to be economically strong. We also need to create value from our data. And one way to do that would be to leverage our data by working with industry and/or the FDA. The goal would be to identify which techniques and technologies are safe and effective so that they can be promoted and improved upon, and which are unsafe or ineffective so that we can protect our patients. There are multiple different stakeholders, but all would benefit from knowing the quality of a new technique and technology. The Executive Council unanimously approved proceeding with this initiative, and the American College of Surgeons Division of Research and Optimal Patient Care Committee has set up a task force to address this as well. And last, and likely most importantly, about what we can do to fill the funnel is embracing obesity medical specialists and multidisciplinary treatment. The obesity treatment pyramid consists of lifestyle modification, intensive medical intervention, pharmacotherapy, bariatric endoscopy, and of course, surgery is the most effective treatment. The greater the intensity of the disease, the greater the treatment that the intensity is warranted. However, jumping up to the top of the pyramid is very difficult for most people with obesity, and that is why, for every one person who has surgery, there are almost 200 who do not make that jump. Embracing obesity medical specialists in multidisciplinary care can allow patients to take one step at a time and climb the obesity treatment pyramid towards surgery through multidisciplinary care, which includes awareness and education about the disease and the treatment options. Currently, obesity medicine is the fastest growing specialty. The American Board of Obesity Medicine diplomats have increased almost tenfold since 2013. Think about heart disease for a moment. People do not just go to a cardiac surgeon's office saying they need an operation. They are first evaluated by a cardiologist. And through testing, education, and awareness, eventually surgery may be determined to be the best option. When you look at this graph about obesity treatment outcomes, you can see by far and away that surgery is the most effective treatment for obesity. However, some medications and combinations of medications can help make a difference. Last week, the FDA approved the first new medication for the chronic treatment of obesity since 2014. Semaglutide, 2.4 milligram, is a weekly injection and results are promising. The excitement about new options may increase awareness about obesity and the best treatments for it. What we have at the MGH Weight Center, and what I'm proposing for you to consider, is having one center, an obesity care home, where multidisciplinary care is provided seamlessly under one roof. A center that includes behavioral programs, medical programs, endoscopic treatments, and surgery. This means one front door with two pathways. Patients can decide if they are ready for the jump to surgery and go directly to surgery if appropriate, or they can choose medical treatment options. Many patients who started with medicine end up with surgery after education and awareness of the safety and effectiveness of surgery. And of course, some of the patients who initially have surgery could benefit from the adjuvant treatments of medications should they need it. Of course, this creates a certain level of complexity, as shown here in the process flow map from our center. However, we, as a field, need to figure out the best pathways in order to provide the best treatments for these patients. At our center, this means embracing obesity medical specialists, and on our team, we have 13 obesity medical specialists providing care for adult and adolescent patients, including an obesity medicine fellow. This means having a bariatric endoscopy team to provide current treatments and explore future treatments for this field. This includes a multidisciplinary team, which includes psychologists specifically trained in the treatment of obesity, as well as registered dietitians similarly focused on the obesity treatment options. Together, as a team, we can help the patient climb the pyramid towards the most effective treatment for obesity. First step could include lifestyle modifications, and for others who have already made such changes, pharmacological therapy might be best. During this process, education and awareness helps people understand the safety and effectiveness of surgical care. So, when you think of how best to get patients to treat their obesity, think of the funnel. The top of the funnel is education and awareness with WebMD, search engine marketing, website overhaul, social platforms, and other healthcare providers. Next includes lifestyle modifications with a multidisciplinary team including dietitians and psychologists. An obesity medical specialist can provide intensive medical interventions as well as anti-obesity medications. Endoscopists and of course surgeons fill out the multidisciplinary team. Without the funnel, only 1 in about 200 patients who could benefit from surgery actually are having surgery. I'm excited to see how many patients we will be able to treat surgically as we increase education, awareness, and embrace obesity medical specialists. So what can we do, or are we doing, so that surgery is more mainstream and we can treat more than the less than 1% of the patients who could benefit from surgery? We are raising awareness and educating potential patients with direct-to-consumer education with our WebMD campaign. We are measuring and promoting quality of life, live longer and live better, by integrating patient-reported outcomes into the MBS AQIP. We are giving our patients a voice in addressing the stigma. We are managing expectations so our patients are our best advocates using such tools as the risk-benefit calculator. We are making strides to demonstrate and create value so all stakeholders can understand the true benefit of adequately resourcing surgical programs for obesity. And, perhaps most importantly, we need to embrace obesity medical specialists and multidisciplinary team care. COVID-19 has proven that humankind can effectively battle a pandemic when we need to. Obesity is a pandemic whose onset is far more insidious than COVID, and yet the overall total devastation to health and well-being, measured in quality and quantity of life, is likely more devastating than COVID. This is an amazing time for metabolic and bariatric surgery. We are a mission-driven society, and our mission is to treat the most formidable disease of our time, obesity. We have proven that metabolic and bariatric surgery is remarkably safe. We know from our patients' own mouths that this is the best thing they have ever done to improve their quality of life. We have achieved access to care for most. We are leading the way in accreditation, data collection, continuous quality improvement, fellowship training, and now board specialty designation. And most importantly, we provide the most effective treatment for this disease with our hearts and with our hands. Yet our mission is unmet, since we help fewer than 1% of the patients who could benefit from surgery. I hope I have provided you with some ideas and examples of what we are doing or should be doing. Think of the funnel and how we can increase awareness and education by embracing obesity medical specialists and multidisciplinary care. These words, which are emblazoned on the wall in my high school cafeteria, explains much about why I personally do what I do. To whom much is given, much is expected. I personally am blessed to have been given so much. We, as metabolic and bariatric surgeons, have been given so much, and as such, much is expected of us. In the Mason lecture, we heard of 3 giants, true icons in metabolic and bariatric surgery who passed this year, and how much of an impact each one of those individuals made on our field through hard work and perseverance. I would like to ask each and every one of you listening today to think about these icons, and then think about what you are going to do to have an impact on our field and our patients. Thank you for the opportunity to serve as your president. So next is my privilege and honor to introduce our next president. Let me again just share my screen, as this is again a live presentation. So our next president, Dr. Shanu Kothari. As you know, the ASMBS is one of the only societies where the members actually have a voice in who becomes president. Through our society, other society members rubber stamp a slate for next leaders. With the ASMBS, you have a choice, and your vote matters. So please vote when the next ballot is out. You chose Dr. Kothari 2 years ago, and after serving on the executive committee of the Executive Council, the ECEC, as we call it, as Secretary Treasurer and then subsequently the President-elect, today the gavel will be passed to Shanu as President. I've known Shanu for years and always appreciated his big smile and abilities to make those around him smile. In these past 2 years and a half, during the weekly ECEC Zoom calls and all that we tackled as a team, I came to appreciate his thoughtful approach, deep insight, and careful consideration of the viewpoints of all stakeholders. The ASMBS is in good hands with your new leader. Dr. Kothari attended Anderson University in Anderson, Indiana, and then medical school at the University of Illinois in Peoria. He completed his surgical residency at the Gunderson Clinic in La Crosse, Wisconsin, before moving to Richmond, Virginia, in the Virginia Commonwealth University Health Center, where he worked with Dr. Harvey Sugerman. Thanks for sharing those stories during the Mason lecture. He then returned to Gunderson in La Crosse, Wisconsin, and established a fellowship at this community-based hospital. He has been at Gunderson for most of his career and moved to Greenville, South Carolina, in Prisma Health, where he now serves as the Vice Chair of Medical Staff Affairs and works with John Scott, our program chair. Aside from his patients and his trainees, the rest of Shanu's life is filled with his family and his faith. Shanu married the love of his life, Peg, 22 years ago. Here's a picture from their wedding day. And here he is with Peg and the 2 children, Brittany and Samantha. Here's another picture of Shanu and his family. And as I said, faith is also important to Shanu. He's been on many missions to Haiti with mountaintop ministries and has led weekly Bible study classes at his local church for years. Another thing that is important for Shanu is getting out on his boat. I present to you Dr. Shanu Kothari, the next captain of the ship for the ASMBS. I expect smooth sailing for the ASMBS with Shanu at the helm. I hereby pass the presidential gavel to you as the president of the American Society for Metabolic and Bariatric Surgery. I think I have to stop sharing my screen for this. Shanu, here you go.
Thank you for that introduction, Matt. It's really an honor to serve as the president of ASMBS. It's been a privilege to follow in your footsteps. I've learned so much from you over the last few years, and I will continue to seek wise counsel from you as you will continue to be our immediate past president on the executive committee of the Executive Council. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shanu. And a brief presentation from Dr. Kothari.
I want to thank Dr. Hutter for his amazing leadership over the last year and a half during these most challenging times. The impact of COVID-19 combined with the disease of obesity has revealed an added vulnerability of the population that we have dedicated our lives to caring for. Despite the challenges we have faced, we as a society stand committed to improving the care and treatment of people suffering from the disease of obesity, as well as advancing the science and understanding of metabolic and bariatric surgery. Our committees are already hard at work for our membership with a variety of tasks placed before them that will help equip our members and improve the care of our patients. We have seen the value of virtual education, but also the necessity for in-person networking opportunities, and we look forward to in-person meetings in the future. Stay tuned as we are working on our ASMBS Fall Weekend meeting. We also look forward to seeing you in person at our annual meeting in Dallas, Texas next June, where we will offer state-of-the-art education and training for our membership as we continue our battle to improve access to care for our patients and to overcome discrimination towards the disease of obesity.
So I believe we have one more thing to accomplish here, which is to present Dr. Hutter with the plaque commemorating his presidential year. So Matt, if I could ask you to, through the magic of technology, produce the plaque.
Can you hand it to me? Can you hand it to me?
I can pretend to.
Oh, thank you so much.
So let me read the inscription on the plaque. It's from the American Society for Metabolic and Bariatric Surgery. Be it known, the Society hereby recognizes and honors Matthew Hutter, MD, FASMBS, 34th President, November 6, 2019 to June 11, 2021. And I know I speak for everyone when I say thank you, Matt, for a job well done.
Well, thank you very much. It's been an honor, and I look forward to the rest of the meeting, and I can't wait till we can see each other in person. So thank you all. That concludes the session.